Today, my dear brothers and sisters, we are challenged to consider our calling to be disciples of Jesus, and the readings expose the hypocrisies of people in authority at all levels. There is instead an invitation to render humble, loving, and committed service to those we serve. When Harry Truman was thrust into the presidency by the sudden death of Franklin Roosevelt, his closest friend, Sam Rayburn, took him aside and said some beautiful advice. This is what he said: "From here on out, you're going to have lots of people around you. They will try to put up a wall around you and cut you off from any ideas but theirs. They will tell you, 'What a great man you are, Harry.' But you and I both know you ain't." Today's readings are all about imposters. There is even a great movie called Great Imposter. In 1961, it was released. Did you know of it? No? Maybe you can see it. It's just about a man who had, he was full of self-confidence and he was very persuasive, so he could take up any job and remain there until he's satisfied, and then he would move on to another one. So he became a teacher, he became a member of a religious order, he became a university lecturer, until he finally got into being a Navy doctor. That's where his reality was unveiled. He was exposed as an imposter. In the first reading today from the prophet Malachi, he condemns and berates the irresponsible and proud and lazy priests who strayed from the ways of the Lord, who causing many to stumble because of their teaching. And in the second reading from the First Thessalonians, St. Paul gives us a beautiful example of how to be humble servant. He sets an ideal example. He says, "We are gentle among you as a nursing mother cares for her children." And in the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus offers a word of judgment against those religious leaders of his day, and by extension to all of us, even to this present moment. All those who have been entrusted with great responsibilities, be it a priest, a bishop, a pope, or a parent, or a teacher, or a nurse, or a doctor, whoever. We are all called to humble service. Jesus in particular points to three sins of the scribes and the Pharisees. First among them is hypocrisy. They do not practice what they teach. Their deeds did not match their words. They meant what they said, but they did not do what they meant. They lacked integrity of life and failed to practice what they preached. He calls for integrity and honesty among the leaders. Let us now look at an example of integrity. This man was a theologian, organist, musicologist, writer, humanitarian, philosopher, and physician. He was renowned as the medical missionary to Africa. And because of all this, he was honored with the Nobel Peace Prize. So he arrived in 1953 at the Chicago Railroad Station to receive the Nobel Peace Prize. He was a tall man with a bushy hair and a big mustache. He stepped off the train. As the cameras flashed and city officials approached with hands outstretched to meet him, he thanked them politely. Then he asked to be excused for a minute. He walked through the crowd to the side of an elderly black woman struggling with two large suitcases. He picked them up, smiled, and escorted her to the bus, helped her get on, and wished her a safe journey. Then Albert Schweitzer turned to the crowd and apologized for keeping them waiting. It is reported that one member of the reception committee told a reporter, "That's the first time I ever saw a sermon walking." Beautiful story of how we are called to be people of integrity. Second accusation Jesus places before the scribes and the Pharisees is their legalism. They overburden the ordinary people. Jesus accused Israel's religious authorities of imposing on people heavy obligations that were difficult to obey. The scribes and Pharisees, in their excessive zeal for God's law, I referred this last week. How many laws did they have? 600 and? Last week, why are you bothering us with the last week's message? 613 laws, right? They were so zealous about them. But today, Jesus, and in the gospel we see, by contrast, Jesus is offering us an easy yoke, a light burden, and the rest for the soul. Now, how do we apply it in our own life? Be it whatever you are, be it a priest or a father or a mother. Here is a good example. On Friday, I had a funeral for one of our parish members, Jim Thomas. At the eulogy, one of his sons spoke up. He began to say, "My father was my hero." He was a hero not because he was, good in many things, but he told us why he thought he was a hero. "I grew up," he said, "watching and listening to him. He taught by example. He taught me how to tie a tie, how to treat people with compassion and respect. When I was a boy, I looked to him for guidance on how to be a man. When I got married, I looked to him as an example of how to be a husband and father. Throughout my life, I have looked to him as an example of how to live my life. I would like to briefly share with you 5 things my father never did for me." And I was curious. What was he going to say? What are those 5 things? Let's say he said, "My father never judged me for my mistakes. Second, he never asked me to do anything he wasn't willing to do himself. Third, he never passed up an opportunity to help someone in need. Fourth, he never let me feel unloved or unappreciated. Fifth, he never told me life was going to be easy, but he always was willing to lend a hand and always tried to lighten my burden." That's why he is a hero. And now he said the torch is being passed on to our generation. Beautiful story of integrity, of how you can be a perfect model to follow. Thirdly, Jesus excoriates the seekers of vain glory, displaying proud exhibitionism. He said they all do their deeds to be seen by others. They act for the wrong reason, to make an impression on others. Jesus challenges those who pervert religion into an opportunity to gain personal honor, glory, and power, and those who draw attention to themselves instead of glorifying God. Today's gospel passage is very challenging because of what Jesus seems to prohibit. He said, "But you are not to be called a rabbi, but you have one teacher, and you are all brothers. And call no man your father on earth, for you have one Father who is in heaven. Neither be called masters, for you have one Master, the Christ. He who is greatest among you shall be your servant. Whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted." challenging words, invitation for us to strip ourselves of all this false sense of, our own selves, hypocrisy, and of course the legalism and vainglory. Now, how do we go forward? How can we take in what God gives us as a gift? You need to be open enough to receive that. As we have often said, our life is not about ourselves. It's about God and about His purposes. Suppose you have a water glass that you fill with concrete and let it harden. Are you able to pour water into it? Certainly not. The same thing applies to our souls. If it is already filled with too much of ourselves, then not much else can be put in. There is no room for God to act in your life. There is a story from a Zen community. It goes like this. When a Zen master meets a new student, there is a tea ceremony. Tea is poured into the student's small handheld cup until he or she gives a small gesture to indicate, "Thank you, enough." A long time ago, there was a mindful, accomplished, self-certain monk who arrived at the temple for training. The master poured tea. The young monk gestured and gestured to stop pouring, but the master kept pouring tea until the cup overflowed. Why? The master explained, when you arrived, your cup was already so full, there was no room for new. Empty your cup. Empty your cup is a message for us. And be a humble servant. Our psalm that we recited today, 131, speaks of it well. It says, "O Lord, my heart is not proud, nor haughty my eyes. I have not gone after things too great, nor marvels beyond me. Truly, I have set my soul in silence and peace. A weaned child on its mother's breast, even so is my soul." A weaned child. We have to wean ourselves of all that fills our minds and hearts with everything other than God. So let us pray for this grace of humility. As Mother Teresa called humility the mother of all virtues, she said, "If you are humble, nothing will touch you, neither praise nor disgrace, because you know what you are. If you are blamed, you will not be discouraged. If they call you a saint, you will not put yourself on a pedestal." So remember again, Harry Truman and his friend Rayburn. They'll tell you what a great man you are, Harry, but you and I both know you ain't.